Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon, members and guests. I join our Chair, Dr Michelle Allen, in welcoming you to the 2018 Annual General Meeting of Meat and Livestock Australia. As you know, after 4.5 years as Managing Director of MLA, this will be my last report to you as I prepare to take on a new role in the commercial sector. In the few minutes ahead, I would like to do three things. Recap on some of MLA's achievements for levy payers in the Australian red meat industry, set out what I see as the opportunities and challenges for our industry, and just to make things, keep things interesting, I'd like to share some of my observations about the industry structure and make a final parting recommendation. In reflecting on MLA's achievements, there are three primary influences I have looked to in performing this role. At the outset, I want to thank MLA's levy payers, our Australian red meat and livestock producers, for the privilege of serving you as Managing Director. Whether it be at big events like LambX or Beef Australia, or small events like the Fitzroy Bull Sale or the Poon Carey Field Day, the reception has always been the same. You've shared your vision for your business, you've shared your ideas, you've shared your frustrations, and you also shared your feedback about MLA's performance, good and bad. You've kept me focused on what matters to you and what you expect from your service provider. The second guiding light for me in this role has been the consumer, the people who put their hands in their pocket with their hard-earned money and choose to put Australian red meat on their plates. As Managing Director, I've been fortunate to travel to our markets, big and small, all over the world, talking to our consumers and listening to their concerns. MLA is now investing more than ever in market research and consumer insights each year to better understand where the opportunities are for the Australian red meat and where the threats are to our industry and the consumption of our product. I've watched the developing trends and the evolution of issues that influence our community's attitude towards the Australian red meat industry, and I've represented industry in the Parliament, in the media and in public forums. The third influence guiding my efforts as Managing Director, not surprisingly, has been the MLA board. When I started in this role, MLA was the principal subject of a Senate inquiry. That inquiry took hundreds of submissions and aired plenty of complaints about MLA and other aspects of our industry. A subsequent independent performance review of the company confirmed that our levy payers and stakeholders required change. The MLA board and our executive listened. And in the past 4.5 years, we have driven a suite of changes centred around ensuring that your MLA is customer-centric, accountable through transparency, and focused on delivering outcomes that make a difference to you and your industry. We recognise that for this industry to truly remain globally competitive, it must innovate like never before, and not simply defer to government to solve our problems. Our sector must innovate or die. One example has been MLA's ambitious 2016 proposal for the processing sector's adoption of DEXA, objective measurement technology. Together with MSA, DEXA will provide genuine transparency to producers and pave the way for processing automation and value-based marketing. This means that red meat carcasses could be valued on retail yields and not the antiquated subjective systems that we currently have. Now, more than 90% of Australia's sheep meat processing capacity has been costed for the installation of DEXA. The technology is already operating in JBS's Brooklyn and Bordertown plants. Together with automation, DEXA is transforming the cost of processing lamb in this country. An independent cost benefit of the project by Greenleaf found a 20% saving, some $6.30 per head on lamb boning costs. These savings are through yield gains, processor and labour productivity improvements and safety benefits. In beef, adoption is slower. But in May this year, the Federal Minister for Agriculture and Water Resources, David Littleproud, switched on the first DEXA unit at Tees Lakes Creek processing plant. MLA provided the technology and the pathway, but adoption was always over and up to industry. If you want proof of the value of big industry-wide game-changing initiatives like DEXA, just look at Meat Standards Australia, which, like MLA, celebrates its 20th year anniversary this year as well. And last night we heard from David Crombie. He outlined what it was like introducing MSA into this industry. But in 2017 and 18 alone, MSA generated $152 million in additional farm gate returns, while an independent evaluation in 2015 showed MSA had paid for itself more than 12 times over. MSA has also paved the way for the implementation of eating quality graded ciphers that now sees Australian red meat traded in global markets on eating quality, rather than arbitrary terms that have little or no value to customers. However, fierce competition from lower cost red meat producers means our industry does not have the luxury of another 20 years to adopt objective measurements and automation technologies that MLA is investing in at the moment to complement MSA. If we are to be truly the very best at delivering what consumers want and value, we need to rapidly move to a value-based payment system where producers are paid on quality, yield and integrity attributes that are important to consumers. With a transparent and efficient system for data exchange, this means information will be linked to the DNA of the animal. This may seem far-fetched and a stretched target, but if we want to achieve increased value for our product, we can no longer accept traditional grading and payment methodologies. The board and executive also recognised other changes were needed to MLA to better assist the industry to remain globally competitive and innovate like never before. This meant making full use of the matching government funds available, and this was only achievable if we tapped into new sources of investment in the red meat research and development, beyond limited funds through transaction levies. For those reasons, MLA aggressively pursued a strategy to secure new partnerships with companies and providers from within and outside our industry, and to ensure no matching government funds were left on the table. And the results speak for themselves. Today, MLA has just under $600 million in contracts for research, development and adoption across the entire red meat value chain. Breaking that down, MLA has attracted $180 million in research funding from entities outside of producer levies and government funding. MLA invested $262 million in 2017 and 18, which was 36% more than the previous year. This increase was primarily due to MLA donor company. It resulted in the MLA group using almost 99% of the government matching funds available in 2017 and 18. The added dividend for our levy payers is that MLA is now also generating $5.5 million annually for our industry in returns from service fees and royalties from that research. This has been reinvested back into your organisation into research and marketing. But within MLA, we've also examined our operating costs. Now, with corporate costs running at just 6.4% of income, MLA is in a unique position when benchmarked with other organisations. For every dollar of investment, today's MLA is investing more in marketing, research, development and adoption and less on administration and overheads. MLA's attention to delivering outcomes is also extended to examination and improvement of those industry structures for which the company is responsible. In 2016, MLA established the National Livestock Genetics Consortium with the aim of doubling the rate of genetic gain in the livestock value chain by 2020, equating to more than $400 million in industry improvement. The same year, the MLA board transformed the old NIS company into a new entity, the Integrity Systems Company. This company serves the industry by strengthening its quality assurance programs and streamlining the delivery of the Livestock Production Assurance Program, National Vendor Declarations and the National Livestock Identification System. At the time of the Integrity Systems Company establishment, the MLA board charged it with the added responsibility to set a strategic plan for the management of industry data. The purpose was to break down the data silos, ensure that industry owns its own data and can freely exchange it. I encourage industry to take the next step and go even further towards a national database managed by ISC and not by individual states. Industry partners working in collaboration to deliver what customers want is a sign of a well-functioning value chain. Central to that is a transparent exchange of information from the customer back down the value chain. So enhancing Australia's competitiveness in export markets while reducing trade barriers has been a key focus of MLA's access initiatives. Red meat has been the beneficiary of every bilateral or free trade agreement the Australian government has negotiated to date. This is a real testament to the effort of MLA and our industry stakeholders. But the work is far from done. Europe, and here I refer to the European Union and separately the United Kingdom post-Brexit, are the missing links in our reform portfolio. I hope the Australian Government and our Australian and European negotiating teams recognise the two-way opportunities presented by a free trade agreement and ensure a great outcome for red meat producers. Yes, we have come a long way in export market access, but we need to continue to put the effort in breaking down barriers. And that barrier includes that Australian agriculture has a trade deficit alone as Australian agriculture of $1 billion with the EU. There are other big opportunities and challenges ahead for the industry's ability to address those, and to address those will have a heavy bearing on its future, as well as the prosperity of individual red meat producers. Many of the opportunities will stem from having a better understanding of consumers and their demands. What we'll often refer to here is consumer insights. But it's not just understanding the consumer, it's about passing this knowledge back to you as producers so you can put it to use. The so-called Insights to Innovation program was piloted through an Australian Government Rural R&D for Profit program, a grant to enable producers to take consumer insights and apply them to drive profit within their own business. MLA is now extending this work to ensure producers can make use of our investments in understanding the changing global and domestic consumer. As an example, Rosie O'Reilly from LambPro took part in this project. She used MLA's consumer research model to identify if there is a market for high-end lamb. By applying MLA's consumer insights, Rosie found consumers who want to pay more for quality. She then identified an opportunity to develop a Wagyu equivalent product in the lamb industry. Having a deeper understanding of the consumer will also allow us to reduce the risks in our R&D activities, ensuring our investments are targeted at areas which will deliver maximum impact for our levy payers. For instance, meeting meeting customer and consumer needs in the future means our industry needs to be responsive, not just to quality and price drivers, but also to increasing interest in how we produce our product. Increasing number of consumers in our domestic and high-value export markets expect the red meat they buy is produced in ways that align with their values. They want to feel good about eating Australian red meat. As a whole, the Australian red meat industry has a great story. In the past year, MLA has invested more than ever in a range of initiatives to share this. This includes the support of the Beef Industry Sustainability Framework, our launch of MLA's new online good meat platform, MLA's partnership with Australia's $45 billion food service sector, and our work with health and nutrition specialists. This morning we launched the Australian Lamb Paddock to Plate story. It's a novel 360-degree virtual reality experience that showcases our lamb industry to consumers across Australia and the world. It complements the Australian Beef Paddock to Plate story launched at ECA in August 2017, which we've now shown to more than 32,500 consumers here and abroad at international food expos. Most recently, that includes a 3-month tour of rural shows, schools and communities across South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales and here in the ACT. These tools are helping to address the gap identified in MLA's research that shows only about 1 in 5 meat eaters have a good understanding of the industry, yet more than 50% are interested in how Australian farmers produce beef and lamb. All of these MLA and industry initiatives to share our story are backed by substance. It's clear consumers want to hear our story and we're delivering on that. At this meeting last year, I announced that Australia's red meat industry could be carbon neutral by 2030. It's a bold and strategic initiative, informed by work undertaken by CSIRO, consumer insights from high-value export markets, and produces historic knowledge of sustainable carbon management, which equates to increased productivity. The so-called CN30 initiative provides the opportunity to provide consumers with even more confidence in the quality and integrity of Australian red meat, and it places our industry on the front foot with policymakers and critics. Over the past year, MLA has been reviewing the pathways identified by the CSIRO for the industry to be carbon neutral. We kicked off a range of initiatives to build on the 45% reduction in emissions achieved by industry over the past decade. This initiative includes bringing together 8 industries and more than a dozen of Australia's top research bodies in a bid to the Australian Government Rural R&D Profit Program. The partners propose to work together to knock emissions out of agriculture whilst improving productivity. I said it last year and I'll say it again today. The Australian red meat industry does not need the heavy hand of regulation to achieve the CN30 target. It is industry's job to take the lead on this, but what we need from state and federal governments is clear, stable policy underpinned by objective science-based evidence that aligns with this initiative and enables continued investment in research, development and adoption to reduce methane emissions from livestock and optimise the carbon cycle in grazing systems. While the influences on consumers have changed in recent years and there is increasing interest in the sustainability of our industry, what has not changed are the benefits of Australian red meat. Price is the most important purchase driver for most consumers, but behind price comes quality and the nutritional benefits of red meat as part of a healthy diet. In a climate of rising retail prices, where Australian beef and lamb already command a premium over cheaper protein, MLA has introduced new marketing strategies to continue generating value for consumers by promoting our product's quality, variety and convenience. MLA will also continue to invest in new partnerships with food service companies to put more red meat on more menus and more dinner plates. Just one example is MLA's partnership with the coffee club chain of 300 restaurants resulted in a massive 50% increase in steak sandwich sales over a 3-month period from April to June. And today, I'm delighted to announce a major new initiative that will put Australian beef on the biggest promotional platform in its history. The Australian beef is the greatest in the world, produced with care by Australians who are prepared to set their sights high and have a go, often taking on the impossible and always with a passion to do their best. So it is fitting that we align with the greatest sporting event in the world. It makes sense the Australian beef, renowned for its superior quality and nutritional properties, should fuel the elite Australian athletes that will compete in the ultimate physical and mental contest. Today I announce that Australian beef will become an official partner of the 2020 Australian Olympic team. The deal will run from the end of this month through to the Olympics to be held in Tokyo, September 2020. It will include cross-promotion here in Australia and Japan, our industry's 2 largest markets. In Australia, marketing activity will extend from TV and social media rights right through to the point of purchase material. Sports dietitians and nutritionists with reach that not only extends to elite athletes but right through to grassroots participant sports will be the focus of MLA's nutrition, communications and education program. In Japan, Australian beef will be served at all official Australian Olympic team events, and we're working with the Australian Olympic team to take the message of Australian beef as part of a healthy diet to communities and consumers all over the country in the nearly 2 years that we have until the Games commence. In closing, I would like to make a number of observations about the future of our industry. We've all heard this week change is inevitable. Much of it is driven by technology. Much of it is driven by economic development. Much of it is driven by changing consumer needs and expectations. As an industry, as an individual business, and for MLA as a service provider, we have a choice. We can embrace change and the opportunities it presents, or we can resist change and get left behind. I firmly believe the former approach is the only way forward, and as a Managing Director of MLA, I firmly believe, and some would say disruptively, that I have always advocated that our industry must embrace change. And as I've said, from time to time this has caused discomfort. Often change is difficult, particularly when old ways are entrenched and interests are vested. I acknowledge that. But if we do not change ourselves in industry, if we do not have the difficult conversations, if we do not make the hard decisions, then ultimately the consumer, the community and the government will do it for us. In the past year, we've unfortunately seen the examples of that. Because of the actions of a few and the inaction of others to address those, the live sheep trade is now opposed by many in the community and slated for closure if there is a change in government. MLA takes its writing instructions from industry, but industry is divided on MLA's role within live exports. On one hand, some want us to run multi-million-dollar TV programs to promote the value of the live export industry, while others want us to stay out of it. We've also seen indefensible behaviour again by the action of a very, very small number in a domestic abattoir. Some of our industry hoped the issue would not be picked up. And when MLA questioned the course of action, we were told we risked further regulation of abattoirs, feedlots and farms. However, the footage of the domestic abattoir was shared around the world where it raised the concerns of one of our largest customers in one of our most valuable markets. It then fell to MLA to defend our lamb industry with a global customer worth up to $46 million to our industry. The fact is, the actions of a few can have an impact on very many. The standard we walk past is the standard we set. It's not enough to simply abide by regulation. Consumers expect that as a bare minimum. If we as an industry are going to share what is an extremely positive story about Australian red meat, we've got to be prepared to back that with every action in every business every day. And when there is a problem, industry leadership needs to be united, prepared and properly equipped to identify a risk. A crisis is an outcome of poor risk identification. The examples I've cited today demonstrate that industry has work to do on all these fronts. Otherwise, you will continue to give more people a reason not to eat red meat. The industry has a memorandum of understanding which sets out the roles and responsibilities for the red meat industry's peak industry councils and service providers. Currently, though, roles and responsibilities for risk identification are not serving our industry well, and I fear we've not learnt from previous incidences like 2011. For the sake of our industry, I make one final recommendation in this role, and that is that the current review of the industry MOU must resolve the ownership of industry risk and the responsibilities for managing those issues, because the current situation is not working to the best interests of our industry. Finally, I would like to thank the MLA Board for their support. One of the greatest strengths of MLA is its skills-based board, a board that draws on global executive and industry experience across the value chain to execute strategy in the best interests of industry without compromise. The MLA Board of the past 4 years has been highly engaged and highly effective in delivering for the Australian red meat industry. There has been plenty of attention given to alternative board structures in other RDCs in the past 12 months or more. But the skills-based model and adherence to high standards of corporate governance by MLA Board has allowed it to be successful. You change this structure at your peril. Another one of MLA's great strengths, obviously, is the company and its dedicated and talented team of staff here in Australia and in our major markets right across the world. Particularly events like this. When I started MLA, we had 100 registrations at an AGM. The next year, 200, 420 at Alice Springs last year, and 805 at this year's event. I want to congratulate the communications team that put all this together, but I particularly want to thank Brad Henderson for his foresight in developing red meat, the red meat program that you see here today that was developed last year. I also thank the staff for the job that they do for the company and the job that they do for you as producers. You have some very dedicated staff at MLA that live and breathe your industry. But unfortunately, while the last 12 months has been one of great achievement for the MLA team, it's been punctuated by tragedy. We take this opportunity to remember those members of our team who recently passed away. Sue Dillon and Murray Urich, who recently were team members of MLA that were taken from us. I also take this opportunity in parting to thank my family who, as Michelle mentioned, have put up with me being on the road from around about 100 to 130 nights a year. Some say that's probably disappointing. If my wife was here, I'd probably say that's how we've stayed married. Finally, I take this opportunity to again thank you, red meat producers, and wish you all the success in the year ahead. I honestly believe you undervalue what you do in the red meat sector. It's not until you travel to your global markets that you understand what and how highly regarded your product is in those global markets. It's been a privilege to serve you in the last 4.5 years, and I thank you for that privilege.